Hello.
There he is. Hi, Kevin. So good to finally see you. I've been watching your channel for years at this point.
Likewise, yeah.
So, what did you have in mind?
If there's a dish that speaks to you, something that you love, I think I would like to try it out. What's something that's impacted you, or something that you think I should try out? That I probably haven't had.
I mean, also since you shared a family favorite of yours, I thought it would be appropriate if I also did that. In terms of like family cooking that I actually grew up with, there was one dish. In Russia, it was just very everyday food. They eat these things called Syrniki, and that is a cottage cheese pancake. So it's very simple. It is cottage cheese mixed with a little bit of flour, a little bit of egg, that kind of stuff. The trick is in getting it firm enough. And that is the reason why almost nobody can actually recreate this dish well outside of Russia. Because it's all about a certain type of cottage cheese. I have never seen it outside of former Soviet countries. It's very, very low moisture. It's crumbly. It's almost crumbly. That's what it is. It's called tvarog. There is a recipe on my channel where you can actually see my grandma cooking it. This is the step-by-step instruction that you want. It's a classic for breakfast. It's also a classic for tea time. The way you eat it is you get a big dollop of sour cream, and then you also add a little bit of jam. Mostly, it's like homemade jam. The stuff you can grow in Russia is pretty limited, but Russia is blessed with very rich forests. So like Russian berries, like nothing beats Russian forest berries. So it's pretty simple, but it's very delicious, and I would love to see your take on it.
Absolutely. That sounds really, it seems simple, yet there's all these different little things to it that'll make it totally different from anything I've ever tried.
Aren't those the best recipes? I mean, you've cooked so much stuff from around the world, but aren't those simple recipes the best ones?
Yeah, absolutely. The things that like take a certain ingredient that you've never heard of before and it totally changes the entire expectation of the dish.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to try this out. I can't wait.
Please send pics. Pics or it didn't happen, Kevin.
Will do. So being that I live in a multicultural area of the world, I was able to go a few blocks to my local Russian grocery and get some tvarog. Now, just like Andong said, this is a very thick, borderline crumbly cheese. Kind of reminds me of a hybrid between American cream cheese and ricotta, but it's much drier than both of those. So much so that the recommendation to strain this in a cloth for up to 3 hours didn't really make sense. I started going down that path, then I realized that there's hardly any moisture in this at all, and it probably wouldn't have helped too much. So I went ahead and added the recommended 250 grams of that to a bowl. Along with about a tablespoon and a half of sugar. This is turbinado sugar, so don't worry about that brown color. Next I'll add a quarter teaspoon of salt. A teaspoon of semolina flour. This is supposed to add a little bit of texture. Then for flavor, I'll add a little bit of cinnamon. Now I had the idea of grating my own cinnamon, but my ginger grater didn't want to make work of this the way it did with the nutmeg in my last recipe. And my microplane wasn't any help either. So I said screw it, I'm using the pre-grated stuff, and it'll turn out just fine. And I want to add some vanilla flavor, but vanilla extract would mess with the moisture content of this dough, so I'm just using raw vanilla bean. Next I'll add a tablespoon of all-purpose flour and get to mixing. And as usual, I forgot the egg. And maybe the eggs I get are a lot larger than the ones they get in Russia, because this dough is looking very wet. If you take a look at Andong's grandma's recipe, hers is much firmer, much more like a dough than a batter. So I tried correcting this with some more all-purpose flour. balanced by a little bit of semolina. That didn't quite do the trick, and I thought it was going to throw off my ratio as well, so I added in some more tvarog. And I got a slightly firmer consistency. Still pretty wet, but a lot more manageable than it would have been. So I transferred that to a heavily floured work surface. And as best as I could, I rolled that into a log. Mind you, it was sticking to my fingers the entire way, so be sure to flour everything, including your hands. Once it was shaped to my liking, I cut it up using my bench scraper. Flour the pieces on all sides. Press them into discs. And cut score marks in a diamond pattern on one side. Looks like Andong's grandma cuts them on both sides, but again, these are so sticky and hard to handle that I wasn't going to risk it. Next, I got my skillet up to high heat. Added in some oil. And added in my first pancake. And of course, the first pancake rule came into effect here. The heat was not quite high enough, so this one did not come out as good as the others. It'll still taste good, but the browning's not quite what I wanted. But after a few attempts, I got the hang of it. The heat should be pretty high, and the flour absorbs some of the oil after each batch, so it's best to add a little bit more each time. And now for a topping, of course I gotta make some homemade blueberry jam. So I've got a saucepan over medium-high heat, added in about 400 grams of blueberries, 100 grams of sugar, along with the zest of 1 lemon, as well as its juice. Citrus fruits have a bunch of pectin, which is something that thickens jams. If you didn't add this, you'd basically get a blueberry syrup. And the acidity also balances out the sweetness of the blueberries. And I'll bring that all up to a simmer. And keep it going until the blueberries break down and the sauce starts to thicken. From there, you can transfer this to a jar, let it cool down, then you're left with an amazing blueberry jam. So I'll plate up a short stack of Syrniki, along with a dollop of sour cream, and some of that awesome blueberry jam. And these are pretty wild. They're like a hybrid of a cheesecake and a pancake. They've definitely got the texture and the flavor of a New York style cheesecake, but then you've got the crispiness on the outside from frying it in a pan. So they're this odd combination of very light, fluffy, yet crispy pancakes. The blueberries and the cinnamon and the vanilla all go really well together and balance out the cheesiness to make sort of a sweet and savory combination that is just amazing. So if you can source the ingredients, then I definitely recommend that you try this out. If you can't, I recommend you try MacGyvering some stuff to make it work. Maybe try American cream cheese or ricotta and let me know in the comments how that works. I want to give a big thank you to Andong for this recipe suggestion. Special thanks to his team for putting it all together. Go ahead and check out their awesome content and subscribe to their channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.